Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Shane with InChain Media. I just got back from a long break actually, and in that time I watched quite a few movies. And I thought I would get started on reviewing some of those movies so you guys can hear my thoughts on them. And starting all of these is my review of The Flash. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get into it. The Flash is a 2023 movie starring Ezra Miller, Michael Keaton, and Ben Affleck. Alright, so before I say anything good or bad about this movie, let me address the elephant in the room and clarify that my review and ultimately my grade of this movie is based on the movie itself, nothing else. My opinions of some of the actors in the movie will be completely disregarded because I want my subjective opinion to be as objective as possible. So just know that my opinions of this movie are just on the quality of the movie, nothing else. So ultimately, I'm going to have to go back and basically retroactively start reviewing all of the DCEU movies up until this point so you guys can know exactly where I'm at with each movie, but just know that I'm not a fan of this universe. There are a couple of movies that I think are great movies, and one in particular that I absolutely loved, but objectively, in terms of like the quality of each movie and how well they work together and how cohesive the story has been and the through lines from start to finish, this universe has been all over the place. Like, I've actually never seen such a jumbled up mess in a cinematic universe in my life. But all that being said, I still go into each movie open-minded because I am a DC fan. I love the comics. I haven't read all of them. I'm not a guru, but I have read my fair share of the comics, and I love them. I'll be honest, I'm not as familiar with Marvel. Mostly what I know about them is what I've seen in the movies. But I like DC Comics. And as a fan of the comics, it sucks constantly being let down time and time again because I go into these movies optimistic. Even like to this day, I go into a DC movie truly wanting to love it. And most of the time I just don't. But I didn't even go to the theater to see The Flash. I'll be honest, I didn't want to spend my money on it, but I did watch it the first night it came to HBO Max The Max, or is it just Max? Somebody can correct me down in the comments, I don't know. But there were things about this movie I genuinely loved. And one of those things was, spoiler alert, seeing Michael Keaton don the cape and cowl again. Now, as to whether or not his return and his character really stuck the landing for this movie the way they wanted, that's a different story, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But I did enjoy seeing him come back. I had been looking forward to that since day one of hearing that, and I don't even know how long it's been. A couple years now, I think. But that was nice. And another thing, as much as I actually hate to admit this, but I actually enjoyed Ezra Miller's humor in this movie. I was not a fan of his at all in the Justice League movie. Either cut, the Joss Whedon or the Snyder cut. I just did not think his humor worked. I don't know if it was his acting or if he was just given a bad script, but it seemed very tacked on and none of the humor landed. But this time it did. And again, I'm not sure if it's the script or if he's just gotten better in the part, but his humor was some of the better stuff in this movie and almost all of it landed. But unfortunately, that's really the only good things I have to say about this movie. It was pretty bleh. Like, it wasn't a bad movie. I would not say it's a bad movie. It's right in the middle. Like, it's not as bad as some of the worst movies in the DCEU, but it's also not as good as some of the better movies have been. So it's really just right down the middle, and that probably wouldn't be so bad if you felt like it was building towards something bigger, like with the MCU, for instance. Even when there was one that wasn't that great or even just bad, it didn't bother you so much because you knew it was just a stepping stone movie. You knew that they were working toward a bigger goal. They had a bigger plan, and even the bad movies contributed something to that plan. But We get none of that here because we all know that this movie was the last movie in the DCEU. This cinematic universe is over. So all of those loose ends that were left dangling in the Justice League will never be tied up. None of that plan will ever come into fruition unless a miracle happens, which I highly doubt it. I think Warner Brothers is wanting to get as far away from that jumbled up mess as possible, and who can blame them? But even aside from that, the movie felt rushed and stitched together. Like, everything made sense and there were clear through lines, I guess, but it really felt like you were watching a movie that was just thrown together in a couple of days just because they wanted to make a quick penny off of it. It's like even the people who made this movie weren't trying because they knew what we all know, and that's that this universe is dead. And that definitely translates to the movie when you're watching it. At least I feel like it does. And because of that, you get some horrendous CGI. I mean, it's not like the worst CGI I've ever seen. It's not as bad as if you go back to like the late 90s or early 2000s. But it's definitely bad when you look at how far we've come in 2023. And when you stack it up against some of the better looking movies that we've had in the last even decade, it's pretty bad. Inexcusably bad for being 2023. And that wouldn't even be so bad if there wasn't so much of it. Like, this movie is a complete CGI fest. From start to finish, it's almost all CGI, it feels like. I could be wrong, I may be over-exaggerating, but it felt like the movie was just 95% CGI. So obviously when it's not good, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. And that's one thing I've heard consistently just about every single person who's talked about this movie say. And then we have the character of Michael Keaton's Batman. You know, as excited as I was to see him, a part of me knew, based on the track record of this entire cinematic universe, that it had a very good chance to not be good. And that's, I guess it wasn't bad. It's like everything else in this movie. It's just right in the middle. And you don't want right in the middle when you're bringing an iconic character back. You want it to be great. You want it to feel epic and larger than life. And you want it to hit you right square in your emotions because you want to walk away from it feeling like it gave you what you needed as a fan. And it just didn't do that. It did not deliver on that at all. And I do totally understand why they didn't put any effort in this movie because, like I said, this movie is going nowhere. The story is going nowhere. But if you're going to do anything, if you get nothing else about this movie right, get Michael Keaton's Batman right, because you are going to offend a ton of fans. Because now, whether we like it or not, this movie is here to stay, and it officially put a blemish on what many would consider a perfect Batman legacy by Michael Keaton. So this movie got docked a bunch of points for that alone because they completely disrespected his character in this movie, right down to even the suit. I mean, I don't know how hard it is to get the suit right, considering that they literally had their own movie to go back and look at as a reference. And I don't know if there's like legal reasons why they couldn't use that suit, but the suit they came up with was terrible. It was awkward looking. It was kind of bulky in all the wrong places. Like, it wasn't a good looking suit at all. And actually, they did the same thing to every other suit in this movie. Now that I really think about it, the Flash's suit wasn't nearly as good as it looked in the Justice League movie. And Ben Affleck's suit was also just terrible. He did not look intimidating in his suit at all. And in my opinion, Ben Affleck and Batman v Superman and either cut of the Justice League was the toughest and baddest looking Batman that we've ever had. And he looked like a wimp in this movie, all because of the suit. I mean, the suit can really make or break any comic book character when it's being translated to live action. And this movie is proof of that. And then let's talk about the villain. Technically a good villain. I mean, I loved Zod in Man of Steel and the original Superman too, but in this movie he felt shoehorned in. I'm not even joking at all when I say it honestly feels like they got halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way into this movie and were like, oh crap, we still don't have a villain. And then just went the lazy route and picked a good villain from a better movie. But I'll admit there's even a part of me that's considered the possibility that maybe they picked Zod because they knew that Man of Steel was one of the more liked movies in this franchise, and they figured if they put that Zod in this movie, maybe it would draw fans in from that movie and help sell tickets. Who knows? And then we get the very wasted and very forced introduction of Supergirl. No offense to Sasha Cal or Callie, I don't know how you pronounce it, but no offense to her. But Melissa Benoist, again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these names right, but she did a much better job in my opinion. And again, a lot of that comes back to her utilization in the movie. It's crazy, and unless I missed something, feel free to let me know, but it almost felt like you could remove her character completely and just make a few minor adjustments to the script, and the movie doesn't change at all. Like, her character has no impact on the movie whatsoever, and that is bad and lazy writing. I don't like that. So basically, everything I've said so far just culminated in what I would consider a very disappointing movie. And that's really the best way I can describe this movie, is disappointing, because it's definitely not the worst movie I've ever seen, and it's not even the worst movie in this franchise, but I do believe it's the most disappointing. And maybe because I felt like it had the most potential. I don't know. I mean, I think everybody likes the Flashpoint paradox, and we all knew that they were going to be pulling from that story quite a bit, and I just think they dropped the ball. But before I give my rating, guys, there is another aspect of this movie that I would definitely put in the good things category of the movie, and that's the cameos that we get in the end. We get a really fun one from Nicolas Cage as Superman, because if you were alive in the late 90s and early 2000s, you might remember that we were supposed to get a Superman film with Nicolas Cage. So I thought that was a really fun Easter egg to throw in there. And the other one was the great Christopher Reeve Superman. I thought that was awesome, and that was really cool of them to put that in there. I have no doubt that a lot of longtime Christopher Reeves fans really enjoyed that, even if the rest of the movie was so mediocre. So, for a rating, I'm giving this movie a 5 out of 10. I just can't justify going any higher than that, but I would love to hear everyone else's opinion of this movie, so drop it down in the comments section and let's discuss it. In the meantime, like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.